the theory of linear momentum to find the maximum coefficient of power conversion was explained, and with the help of that, the Brett's criteria or Brett's criterion was defined, and you came across the number 16 by 27, that is the maximum possible efficiency of a turbine, of a wind turbine, if it converts the kinetic energy into mechanical energy, is 59.26%. And there are many simplifying assumptions in that criteria. Now, if certain things are considered, like the the disturbance created in the airstream, and then the wake rotation and the effect of the drag force, etc., then it is seen that the efficiency number, the maximum possible efficiency number, would come down. So the Gluert criteria, the equation for the same was also given. So as per that criteria, Cp is equal to 16 by 27 into exponential of minus 0.3538 lambda raised to minus 1.2946. So this multiple of 16 by 27 will always be less than 1. Lambda is your tip speed ratio. So Cp, if the effect of wake rotation is considered as done by Gluert and other investigators, and they came up with this equation, then the maximum possible value of Cp, which is as per the Brett's criterion is 16 by 27, would come down further. So this equation may be used to find the limit of the efficiency. If this equation is to be used, then it will be supplied to you, though it doesn't look very complicated, but then the numbers that are appearing in the equation, it may not be possible to remember those numbers. So if it is to be used, it will be provided to you. So we are going to solve an example today using this equation, Gluert criteria, and then a further modification of that, which also considers the effect of drag. So that is represented as Cp is equal to 16 by 27 exponential of the first term remains same, but again minus lambda into epsilon. This is what is deducted further. So this is going to reduce the efficiency or Cp value further. And what is this epsilon? It is the ratio of drag coefficient to lift coefficient. So if you can get that number, the ratio of drag coefficient to lift coefficient, you can put it here, and lambda is, let's say, already found, then you will be able to get this second term, which will further reduce the value of Cp. So using these equations, we will check what are the possible highest values of coefficient of power. So an example is given here. You can write down the data. So a propeller wind machine has a rotor diameter of 60 meters. It is operating at a location having a wind speed of 35 kilometers per hour and rotating at 20 rpm. Calculate theoretically the power which the machine can extract from the wind if A, only wake rotation is considered, B, both wake rotation and the effects of drag are considered. Value of drag to lift coefficient may be taken as 0.012 and density of air is 1.2 kg per meter cube. So first we can find out the value of Cp for case A, that is if wake rotation is considered. So here the Gluert criteria or equation can be used, and in the second one the effect of drag is also to be considered. Now for both the cases you need lambda, the tip speed ratio. The definition of tip speed ratio lambda is, it is the velocity of the tip of the blade divided by the velocity of the wind. Now how much is the velocity of the wind? It is 35 kilometers per hour. But if you want to use it in the equation to have the parity of units, you will convert it into meter per second. So 35 kilometer, so that's 35 into 10 raised to 3 meters, but this is per hour. So to get it per second, you have to divide it by 3600, right? So multiplied by 10 raised to 3 divided by 3600. So basically, whenever the speed is given in kilometers per hour, if you divide that number by 3.6, you get the velocity in meter per second. So get the velocity in meter per second. That is the first step. Second, it's rotating at 20 RPM. So your formula for lambda, the tip speed ratio would be omega into r. R is the radius, divided by u. U is the velocity of the wind. So how much is omega? 20 RPM. So it is 2 pi n by 60. Omega is equal to 2 pi n by 60. So 2 pi into n is 20 RPM and divided by 60, right? So that will give you the value of omega. And then how much is r? The radius of the rotor. The radius of the rotor is 60 meters. Diameter is 60 meters. So radius is 30. So using these things, you can get the tip speed ratio. So the angular velocity 2 pi n by 60 is 2.094 radian per second. U is equal to 35 into 10 raised to 3 divided by 3600. 35 divided by 3.6. So that is 9.722 meter per second. Now get the tip speed ratio. Lambda is equal to omega r upon u. So that's 2.094 into 30 meters is the radius, u 9.722. So tip speed ratio is 6.463. Okay. Now you can use the Gluert equation to get the highest possible value of Cp. Okay, so this now formula Cp is equal to 16 by 27 exponential of minus 0.3538 lambda raised to minus 1.2946. You can put the value of lambda here and get the number. So 16 by 27 is 59.26, right? But here you get 57.42 percentage or 0.5742 as a fraction. So you can see that the value of Cp here is less than the value given by the Betz criteria, because Betz criteria did not consider the wake rotation. So if wake rotation is considered, then the value of Cp that is expected goes down. Now if the effect of drag is also considered, then you'll have to like deduct lambda into epsilon from the thing inside the bracket, right? So if you do that you will get a bit different number, and it is expected that it will be even less than the value of Cp. Okay, so let's do that exercise. Cp is equal to 16 by 27 exponential of, then you're putting the values here. First term is same, second term lambda into epsilon. Epsilon is given, right? It is 0.012. Lambda is already found. You can put that value. So you get Cp here equal to 0.5282, 52.82% is the efficiency. So you can see it is significantly, it has gone down. This shows the effect of the drag, which actually opposes the force that is available for rotation of the blade. So that reduces the value of coefficient of power. Now you are interested in the value of power that will be generated by the wind turbine. That's nothing but the power in the wind multiplied by Cp. So let's get the power available in the wind. So that is given by the formula 1/2 rho A U cube. So how much is the area, swept area or frontal area? It is like the diameter is 60 meters. So it's pi by 4 d square. So area is equal to pi by 4 d square. So get the area, pi by 4 into 60 square. So that is 2827 meters square. Okay, now you can get the value of PW. Okay, that is power in the wind, which is 1/2 rho. Rho value is given to you 1.2 A U cube. U is already known to you, 9.722 meter per second. So now using those numbers, you can get the power in the wind. So power in the wind, 1/2 rho A U cube, 1/2 into 1.2 into 2827 into 9.722 raised to 3. So this is equal to, you will get it in watts, right? You will get it in watts, and you divide it by 1000 and express it as kilowatts. Fine. Now the remaining things are very simple. In case A, you are going to take Cp equal to 0.5742. In case B, you are going to take Cp equal to 0.5282, right? Pt, the power delivered by the turbine, is equal to Cp, coefficient of power, into Pw, the power in the wind. So that will give you two different values for the two different cases. For case A, where only wake rotation is considered, Pt is equal to Cp, which is 0.5742 multiplied by Pw, which is 1558.74 kilowatt. So here you are getting 895.028 kilowatt. That is the power which can be generated by the turbine. And in second case, where the drag effect is also considered, the Pt value would come out to be lower because your Cp value is lower, 0.5282 into 1558.74, right? So that gives you 823.326 kilowatt. Okay. So here the lower value of Cp was 57.42%, right? This is again, this has many idealizations which are not there in the practical turbines. Okay, so because of that, they actually give you even less efficiency or coefficient of power as compared to that. So the performance curves for the turbines have already been discussed, right? Because this theory is mainly developed for propellers, but then the turbines, all turbines are not ideal propellers, so they give you very different type of performance curves, which have been already discussed. Now the most commonly used, the horizontal axis propeller turbine. What are the different components of that? What is the function of each component? and that was explained with the help of a diagram as well as with the help of videos. And the working principle of that, because the blade cross section is an aerofoil cross section, and how the lift force and drag force are generated and how are they used to convert the kinetic energy into the mechanical energy was also explained. The different parameters like the angle of attack, right? Each angle, etc., were explained, and the drag and how the forces act upon the blades was also shown. What is the effect of each force? That was also explained with the help of this diagram. So it's mainly the force torque what is written here. So this force is responsible for rotation of the blade, right? But then as a byproduct, the thrust is also generated, which has to be withstood by bearings and then tower and the foundation. So now let's take another example. So at a wind turbine site, wind velocity is 10 meters per second. Calculate the following for air at standard atmospheric pressure and 15 degrees Celsius temperature. Total power density in wind stream. So this is quite similar to what was done in the previous example. Maximum obtainable power density. Okay, so that is Betz criteria. Obtainable power at 40% overall efficiency if the turbine diameter is 120 meter. When you say power density, it is per meter square area, right? But if diameter is 120 and efficiency is given, let's say 40%, then what will be the power that you can expect? And the torque and axial thrust at this maximum power production point. So maximum power production point is 16 by 27. Okay, your CP is equal to 16 by 27 if the RPM is 40. So let's try and solve the problem. The standard atmospheric pressure is 101.325, which may be used here, and the gas constant for air 0.287 kilojoule per kg Kelvin. So first thing is, like, you want to get the energy in the wind. So that is 1/2 rho A U cube. So you need rho. Now rho is not given, but the conditions, the temperature and pressure are given, and you can use the ideal gas equation to get the value of rho. So rho is equal to P upon RT. So you are getting rho equal to 1.226 kg per meter cube. Okay. Then the next thing is power density in the wind, PW upon A, that is 1/2 rho U cube. So how much is your U? U is 10 raised to 3. Rho is already found 1.226. So that may be used here. So that is 613 watt per meter square. That is the power available in the wind. But as per the Betz criterion, the power, maximum power that the turbine can produce is 16 by 27 times of this. So the maximum possible mechanical power per meter square area would be 16 by 27 of the previous number. So you get 363 watt per meter square, right? You can never expect to get power density more than this. Okay. And how much is the area of the turbine? It is 120 meter diameter. So area is pi by 4 d square. So that's 11,309 meters square, the swept area of the turbine. Now, if the efficiency is 40%, then your electrical power, let's say it is the overall efficiency. So it's 0.4 of the PW upon A is 613 watt per meter square, and area is 11,309, right? So with the help of that, you get this number 277-2966 watt, or you can convert it into megawatts, and that is 2.773 megawatt is the power that you can produce with the help of this single turbine. And at this 16 by 27, CP equal to 16 by 27, how much is the torque produced and how much is the thrust produced, that is found here. So at CP equal to 16 by 27, your power density is 363 watt per meter square. So that is used here. So 2 pi power is nothing but 2 pi nt upon 60, right? So that has been used here. And here you get torque equal to 980036 Newton meter, or 980, roughly 980 kilonewton meter. That's the value of the torque. And the axial thrust. Now, if your efficiency is 16 by 27, or as per the Betz criterion, U4, the final velocity at which the wind is going out, is 1/3 of U1, the initial velocity of the wind, right? And axial thrust would be equal to the change in kinetic energy. So Fx is equal to 1/2 rho A U1 square minus U4 square, and this U4 is nothing but 1/3 of U1, right? So basically Fx is 4 by 9 rho A U1 square. This is when the efficiency is 16 by 27 as per the Betz criterion, right? So this would be the maximum possible axial thrust. The wind turbine power should be able to withstand this axial thrust. So Fx is equal to 4 by 9 rho A U1 square. You put the numbers here and you get the thrust value. 615 kilonewton is the axial thrust. So you can accordingly design the bearings and the tower and the structure to withstand this axial force. Okay. So now we are diverting slightly from the previous line of delivery, and now we are talking about the wind energy potential and site selection. So how do you decide whether a particular place is good for setting up wind turbine or not, right? What are the tools with the help of which you will be able to decide that? So the first thing would be the measurements, right? You have to do the measurements not just once or a few times, but throughout the year, and maybe for many years. You have to do the measurements of wind velocity and the direction of the wind. So which instruments would be used for this purpose? So those instruments are shown here. Looks very simple. The one of them is this cup type of anemometer, right? And it gives you the wind velocity, and the other one is wind vane, giving you the direction of the wind. So both the things are important. So the velocity would be measured. Now, how frequently would you measure the velocity? Because the wind velocity is continuously changing. So rather than an instantaneous value, an average value over a certain period would be useful. Okay. So what is generally done is, wind velocity is reported as hourly average. So during 1 hour, let's say from 1 p.m. to 2 p.m., what was the average velocity? And then again from 2 to 3, how much was the average velocity? So this may be done for all 24 hours, and then for the all 7 days of the week, and then all 30 or 31 days of a month, and then for all 8760 hours of a year. So normally the wind velocity is expressed as the average of an hour. So how it might be done? It's not that you will measure it only once in an hour. in our right. It is, it will be measured, let's say every second, or even more than that you might do it. Let's say you are measuring it every second, then you have 3600 values of the wind velocity. So what you do is you add all of them and divide it by 3600, so that gives you the hourly average value, right? Now you may say that how can I write down the reading of each and every second? Normally you don't have to, it is an automatic process, right? You don't have to write it down. It's there is a data logger which continuously like captures the number and stores the number, and then you can further process it and find the hourly average. Okay, so this is about the measurement of the wind velocity. And now you know that normally you will give the hourly average data. This is even done for temperatures, right? So because of, for a few seconds or a few minutes, the temperatures may go to a very high value, but that doesn't mean that it sustained for the whole hour. So normally you give hourly average value of different parameters. So, and then with the help of that, what you are going to do, you are interested in the power in the wind. So 1/2 rho A U cube. Now in that 1 hour, like whatever wind passed through a particular area, how much energy did it contain? So it is 1/2 rho A U cube. Now this, you are talking about 1 hour. In 1 hour, how much energy, like let's say 1 meter square area, so A is equal to 1. So how much energy passed in the form of kinetic energy of the wind? How much energy passed through 1 meter square area? So how will you find that? 1/2 into rho into U cube, and delta T is 3600, right? So let's say your U cube was 10 meter per second. So it's 1000, and then this multiplied by 1.2 and 1.1/2 and then 3600. Then whatever number you get will be in joules. Whatever number you get will be in joules, right? So you're interested in the energy, not the instantaneous power. So in 1 hour, the wind that passed through a particular area has had this much energy. Now even just 1 hour is not enough, because the system is going to operate continuously, not just for 1 hour, but not even one day or 1 week or 1 month, but throughout the year. So you'll be generally interested in such data. So what you will do is you will find the hourly average U for each hour of a day, and then a week, and then a month. So if it is a, let's say 31 day, uh, 31 day month, right? So for each hour, you have one value of the hourly average. So you have the data for 744 hours. Or you have seven, like you're talking about a particular month, let's say October, so 31 days. So uh, like 24 into 31, okay, so that will give you 744 hours in that month. So for each hour you have the wind velocity number. Now this rho into A may be constant, 1/2 is a constant, right? So what you will do is you will make cube of each velocity and add up all of them, and then multiply it with 3600. Then you will get the energy in the wind for the month. Then that number in joules may be very big. You may divide it with 1000 to get it in kilojoules. You may divide it by 10 raised to 6 to get it in megajoules, or you may also not multiply it by delta T and call it an hour, then you get it in watt hour, or you can convert it into kilowatt hour. Right? So that's how you will get the energy in the wind for one um, for one whole month. And again, this may be done for all 12 months, and you will get the data or the number for the annual energy content in the wind. So we are going to take one example based on this formula. I will provide you the data for a particular site, the data taken at Kandla, and that is presented in the form of a table. And with the help of that table, you will be able to get the energy in the wind for a particular month. Okay. So that example might be taken in the next class after covering some more points here in today's class. So I'll provide you those tables before the previous class, and with the help of those tables you will be able to use this formula and get the energy in the wind for a given month. Okay. Now whether there is an effect of the height on the velocity, yes. One thing is that near the ground the wind has lot many disturbances. So that is one thing which is not preferable. And second, as the height increases, the velocity of the wind is also high. And normally you can correlate it with this formula. V1 upon V2 is equal to H1 upon H2 raised to alpha. Okay. So higher the height, more the velocity. This alpha is roughness coefficient, and it is normally for land without obstruction it is taken 0.16, and normally wind turbines would be put up at places where you don't have many or you don't have like many obstructions. So graphically, the rise in wind speed with height will be as shown in the figure. And you can also get an exact number if you are measuring height at a measuring the velocity at a particular height. You can predict the velocity at some other height at the same location. So one such example is taken here. An anemometer to measure wind speed at height of 50 meter. Say your measurement, the wind, the mast on which you are putting up the anemometer and the wind vane. So that's, let's say, at a height of 50 meters, and it shows the speed equal to 9 meter per second. It may be an average value, and it is 9 meter per second. What will be its value at 80 meter on a flat land? Take roughness coefficient equal to 0.16, right? So your measurement facility is at, let's say, 50 meters height, but you want to put up a turbine at 80 meter height. So you can expect that there the wind velocity will be higher. So you want to know what will be the velocity at 80 meter. So if you go on increasing the height at which the wind turbine is put, you will get higher and higher wind velocity, and you can expect to get more power per unit area of the turbine. So here you can get the number with the very simple formula, right? So V1 upon V2 is equal to H1 upon H2 raised to alpha. So your V1 is 9, V2 is to be found, and H1 is 50, H2 is 80 raised to 0.16, the roughness coefficient. So you get V2 equal to 9.7 meter per second. Okay. So the velocity has increased as you went up. Okay. Now you have the wind data available. So as I told you, like there are 8760 hours in a year, and for each hour you have the direction of the wind and you have the velocity of the wind. Now you can do some required statistical analysis with the help of that data. You should go to group them or you have to analyze them so that they give you some insight into the data, and it may be represented in different ways to get more understanding of the data. Now, one of the ways in which these data are presented is called wind rose. Okay, it is a figure like resembling a bit like a rose. The rose has petals, so this has some petals, and the name is given wind rose. It basically gives the direction, predominant direction of the wind, as well as the percentage of the time for which the wind was available in a particular range. So I'll explain you this with the help of a figure. What is done is, like, you talk about the four directions: west, south, east, north. Then we talk about like northeast, then northwest, and then southwest, and then north, uh, uh, like, and southeast, etc. Right? But uh, uh, there you are talking about an angle of 45 degrees. But here what is done is that is divided further into two parts. So when you say north, northwest, what you mean is it's making 22.5 degrees with the north towards west. Okay, and then your northwest, and then your northwest west. Okay, so at each 22.5 degrees you are drawing a line, and then the wind direction is put into one of these categories or these directions. So as you can see, the wind rose here, it's for the city of Ahmedabad. So what you see here is the one direction, so north, south, east, west. Then this 22.5 degrees with west is WNW, west, northwest. Then 45 degrees with west is northwest. Then 22.5 degrees with north is north, northwest, right? And similarly for all other pairs of the direction. Then you have different direction of the wind. You are putting them as one of these direction. It is coming from a particular direction. So you are grouping them according to that. That is one thing. And then you've drawn the circles. You can see percentage written here, 10%, 20%, 30%. So out of that 8760 hours, if I say 10%, it means that 876, right? So this represents 876 hours. Then 20%, the double of that, and so on. Then the wind velocity is again different for different hourly average value. So here you can see at the bottom different colors are shown. So first thing is calm, means almost zero velocity. Then this is in kilometers per hour, 3.6 to 7.2. So basically this is 1 to 2 meter per second. So it's shown with gray color. Then this 7.2 to 10.8. So basically 2 to 3 meter per second, that is shown with black color. Then the next with the help of a red color. Then blue color, orange, and green. Now here you can see different petals of the rose. Okay. So like you can see this west direction, and this one seems to be the longest one. It means that for the wind comes from west direction for highest number of hours. It's even more than 20% of the time, right? Somewhat more than 20% of the time, maybe 22, 22.5% or something. Okay, so that's the predominant direction. Next is the southwest. It's nearly 20% of the time. Okay. Then you are not just stating the direction, you are also talking about out of all those hours, for how many hours it was in 1 to 2 meter per second. So you can see here the small arm here in gray color. So whatever percentage it represents, for that many percentage of hours, the wind was coming from west and it was between 1 to 2 meter per second. Then the next thing, this black color, it was between 2 to 3 meter per second. Then this red color, 10.8 to 18 meter per second. So that is perhaps the longest arm. So most of the times, or for around, let's say 10% of the time, the wind is coming from west and is in the range of 10.8 to 18 kilometer per hour. Okay. And similarly, you can have a look at the different arms and you get qualitative as well as a bit quantification also is available with the help of this diagram, right? So like it's a tool, visual tool, which helps you to grasp the data about the wind velocity and direction fast. Okay. So this is about the wind rose, which is one of the tools, one of the ways in which the wind measurement data are represented, and one can quickly grasp some basic things about the direction and the velocity of the wind. Now there are other tools also, or other ways also, in which the using which the data of the wind velocity in particular is represented. So one of them is frequency distribution curve. Okay, so what is it? As I explained earlier, you have the wind velocity for hourly average wind velocity for each hour of 8760 hours in a year. Now what you do is you group them. You group them for all the hours where the velocity was between 0 to 1 meter per second. Next, count the number of hours for which it was available between 1 to 2 meter per second, and so on. When I say 0 to 1, it may be 0 to 0.99, and then the next 1 to 2, or 1 to 1.99, and then next 2 to 2 to 2.99, and so on. So for each 1 meter per second, you find out how many number of hours for which it was in that range. And then you put the velocity on the horizontal axis and hours on the vertical axis. So you can have a column chart. You can have a column chart. You can, on the vertical axis, you can have number of hours, or you can divide number of hours by 8760. Then it will give you fraction of hours, right? And you can draw the column chart. So that type of column chart would be called frequency distribution curve. It will be called frequency distribution curve. So one such frequency distribution curve is shown here. So this 4.19. So this is 0. This is 5. It's written 15, but it's not 15. It is 5. 5, 10, 15, 20, 25 meter per second. That's the wind velocity. So the first one shows the velocity between 0 and 1. Okay, and the vertical axis shows the its written probability distribution, probability density, or its fraction, right? Number of hours divided by 8760. Okay. So 0 to 1, you have this much fraction or this many number of hours. Then for 1 to 2, it is bit higher. 2 to 3, it is even higher. Then 3 to 4, it is higher. 4 to 5, even higher. And the highest is somewhere in this region, somewhere between 5 and 10, right? For 8 or 9 something meters per second. Then beyond certain speed, again the number of hours for which you get it goes on decreasing. And if you are talking about very high velocity, there may be only a few hours, or wind may not have ever gone to that high velocity. So it may almost touch the horizontal axis. So if you draw a smooth line, okay, touching the columns, you may present it as a column, or you may present it as just a line, right? So in that case, it should be touching the top points of the line, but you're trying to draw a smooth curve. So that type of curve is called frequency distribution curve. Frequency distribution curve. Okay. The next type of curve that may be drawn is velocity duration curve. Now you have number of hours for each range of velocity. Now, if I'm talking about 0 to 1, let's say there were 26 hours in that range, but the velocity was always more than 0 meter per second. So for all 8760, it was more than 0 meter per second. If I talk about 1 meter per second, there are a few hours where it was less than 1 meter per second. So out of 8760, like let's say for 60 hours, it was less than 1 meter per second. So it was 1 meter per second or higher for 8700 hours. Then I may talk about 2 meter per second. So 2 meter per second, let's say it was 60 hours for 0 to 1. It was 200 hours for 1 to 2, right? So 260, for 260 hours, it was less than 2 meter per second. So for remaining 8500 hours, it was 2 meter per second or higher. So that way you can get or tabulate the data and present them as velocity versus number of hours, or rather, yeah, velocities versus number of hours for which that minimum velocity was available. So in that case, we will draw a graph like this. So what does this graph show? If you talk about this rightmost point, it is 0 wind velocity and it should be 8760. It means for all 8760 hours, the velocity was always more than 0 meter per second. Now at 8000, you can talk about certain velocity. Let's say it is somewhere around 5. So what does it mean? For 8000 hours, it was 5 meter per, at minimum 5 meter per second. So it was for 8000 hours, it was 5 meter per second or more. Then you can see this line drawn here at 5000, and it corresponds to 10 meter per second. It means that for 5000 hours, it was 10 meters per second or more than that. So that's how the points are put here, and then you join them and you get the velocity duration curve. Right? So this is another tool which may be used to present the wind velocity data, or rather the wind data may be presented like this. The velocity duration curve is important, but even more important is another curve, which is power duration curve. So we'll talk about the power duration curve. So the frequency distribution curve basically here one thing you can see that this shows the wind speed on the horizontal axis. Here it is on the vertical axis. That is one part. Second part is that it gives the number of hours for each range. Number of hours for each range. While here its addition or cumulative values are presented. So if you are talking about 5 meter per second or let's say 10 meter per second, if you put it here, what you see is 5000. It means for 5000 hours, it was 10 or more than that. So you're actually not talking about a single velocity or a small range. You're talking about the number of hours for which it was more than a particular wind velocity. Right? So that's the difference between the velocity duration curve and the frequency distribution curve. Right? The name itself are also a bit different. So here you are talking about frequency, here you are talking about the velocity, a particular velocity which is available for some number of hours, right? And for means a number of hours for which a particular velocity or a higher velocity is available. Okay. Now power duration curve. So here you are actually making the cube of velocity. You are making the cube of velocity because you know that the power in the wind is 1/2 rho a u cube, right? 1/2 rho a u cube. So the power is proportionate to cube of the velocity. Now, if you look at the velocity duration curve, here what you are doing is, let's say for 5000, you know that it was 10 or more than that. But if I make cube of this will become 1000 and my power will be actually proportionate to the 1000 and not proportionate to 10. So I'm redrawing this type of curve by making cube of the velocity, and what you get on the vertical axis will be power, right? Some constant may be multiplied 1/2 rho a u cube, so 1/2 rho into a many times it's just a constant and it will be proportionate to the velocity or cube of velocity. So you are drawing such a curve, so it's going to rise very steeply as you can see here. So the vertical axis will be cube of the velocity, and because 1/2 rho a u cube is power, it may be shown as power also by multiplying some constant with that. You may even multiply Cp, the coefficient of power here, with the number that you get by cubing the velocity. Okay. So you can see that it's rising very rapidly, and it's so high that this part is not even shown. It's too high to be accommodated in the chart because it is cube of the velocity that you are talking about. Right now, here you see some shaded area and some points marked. This is cut-in point, this is full load, this is furling point, and this A, B, C, D, E, F, G, etc. is written. So what are all these things? Okay, let's start with this cut-in point. So there you see, let's say the velocity is nearly 5 meter per second. So unless some minimum amount of wind velocity is available, you will not start the turbine. So that point is called cut-in point. I think we'll not be able to complete this in today's lecture. So let's keep it for the next lecture.